What is up, everyone? Today, episode
7.
And today, we're going to go over how to make a mashup. All right, so we are in Ableton now, and this is the mashup that we'll be taking a look at today.
Hey, now walk it out, now walk it out, now walk it out, walk it out, now walk it out, now walk it out, DJ Mike on the track, walk it out, DJ on, walk it out, we at it again, baby, north side walk it out, here we go, now walk it out, 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 now walk.
Absolute slapper. So when it comes to making these mashups, I have a very technical approach and then a creative approach. So the first part with the technical approach is all about finding the key and making sure your instrumental and acapella are in the same key at all times. And the way I do that is I use the Camelot wheel. So the Camelot wheel will basically give you the key of each song with a designated number followed by a letter. So there's 1B, 2B, 5A, all that stuff. The inside is minor, the outside is major scale. I'm not going to go into music theory because that's a whole nother thing in itself. But in theory, if you want to have the best results in terms of acapellas and instrumentals matching up, you just want to match the key. So for example, these two tracks are both in E flat minor, which is 2A. And the way I found that was through mixed in key and Serato. In Serato, you can actually display the key in terms of the Camelot wheel, which makes things a lot easier if you just go into your settings. And I believe it's under, library display, where it says show key as. You could do classic, open, original, but if you select Camelot here, it'll then give you the option to have these sort of things pop up. And if you don't have it popping up in the right section here, if you click on this arrow, you can go to key and select it. So then you always have the key in your display. So if you're trying to sift through, analyze songs, and find an acapella and instrumental that go well together, you could do it in Serato that way. What I did, though, is I went on Heavy Hits and I searched for it. I believe Savage when it came out. So right when Savage came out, I saw the Heavy Hits had the instrumental up, so I downloaded that immediately because I knew I would end up using it at some point. And it was in the key 2A here. So that day, I went and in this nifty little search feature here, free little plug here, Schuler, you can search by key. So I typed in or selected 2A. And the BPM I was looking for was between 80 to 89. And the version I was looking for was an acapella. And then I also put in hip-hop R&B, I think, because I was trying to keep it within the same genre. And then you just hit enter and search it. And these are all the ones that came up in that range. And Walk It Out was one of the acapellas that was in there. And that is how I sort of put together technically the acapellas and instrumentals that I'm going to use to make my mashups. Now, when it comes to the creative side of things, I try to match the energy of both tracks. So, for example, Savage, pretty up-tempo, high-energy, prime-time sort of track. Same with Walk It Out. So that's what I did, was I matched those two up. But, for example, I'm not going to take Can't Believe It Here by T-Pain and put it over top of Savage. Even if it does sound amazing, harmonic, and just beautiful, I'm still not going to do that because those two songs are totally different in terms of the energy. So in the creative side of things, always try to match the energy of the songs. Don't try to put some super slow jam with just some thumping trap banger because they're in the same key. Make sure that it makes sense logistically. Think about when you're DJing, if it's prime time of the night, I really don't think you want to be playing Can't Believe It, T-Pain. No offense, T-Pain. He's got bangers too. Now back to the mashup itself, the only things I did here in terms of chopping up the actual audio was I chopped up the instrumental. I don't recommend chopping up the acapella at all because that's the part that people tend to recognize. So sort of changing that up, you won't be able to really get away with it and people will notice it. But if you chop up the instrumental and play with the phrasing a little bit to match the acapella, then people will typically don't notice the difference, and it sounds a lot smoother that way. So you can see here, I just added a break where there's this break or bridge in this song because I don't think Savage has a bridge, but Walk It Out technically does.
Double shots, it'll let your body go. My on my side, haters hate, think it's funny. I walked it on these now, getting to the money. Froze on them, I'm not talking about dancing. Count on the charm, diamond steady, steady dancing. Now walk it.
That little break right there. Savage actually didn't have a section for it, so I made it by chopping up part of the instrumental here and then pasting it over here later on in the track. And Walk It Out, all I did was just quantized it and made sure it was snapping onto the grid. How I did that was inside of the sample here. If you double click on the audio, it'll come up down here. And if you zoom in, find your one where you want the thing, or you want to zoom in and find where the one is. So the one on this song is technically a breath. What I did was, if you right click on this warp marker, you can hit warp from here straight, and then it will snap everything to the grid from this point on. Now, it is important to note that sometimes this doesn't work and it sounds like absolute shite. So it's important, once you warp all of this and quantize it, to go back through again, listen to it, and if there's anything that doesn't sound right, you can go in and then you can either double click and use that warp marker, or you can double click anywhere on this section here and you can make your own warp marker and move it along the grid as you see fit. And then if you mess anything up, just hit Command Z. I use it religiously because I'm constantly messing things up. And then same thing with Savage here. I ended up warping it on right here on this flag. I did warp from here straight. And then from there, I just added a couple minor adjustments as I wanted to make sure everything was right on the grid. So in Savage here, you'll notice there's actually a small duck around 1,000 hertz here. What I noticed is that the acapella had a little bit of a difficult time cutting through here. So I'll play it for you guys.
Now walk it out, walk it out, now walk it out, walk it out, DJ, walk it out, DJ runs on the track.
Now this is with it off.
Now walk it out, walk it out, now walk it out, walk it out, DJ, walk it out, DJ.
That small little bit just helps it cut through. And how I found that section that needed to be kind of dipped out was, if you pull up any sort of EQ, or down here, if you pull up a spectrum, you can see where there's the most activity on an audio file.
Now walk it out, 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 now west side walk.
So you can see a lot's going on around 1,000 hertz here. So that gave me a good sign that maybe I should try to duck some frequencies around that point. And that just gave me a good starting point. I got a little nitpicky, zoomed in, and then I just did a slight duck there. And then I'll just A-B it once more so you guys can hear the difference.
Now walk it out, walk it out, now walk it out, walk it out, walk it out, walk it out, DJ runs on the track, walk it out, DJ on, walk it out, we at it again, baby, north side walk it out, here we go. Now walk it out, walk it out, 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 now west side walk it out, south side walk it out.
So those little changes like that make a big difference in the long run. The only other thing I did on the acapella was I used actually the fab filter here, and I just rolled off the low end because I didn't want anything interfering with the bass lines and low frequencies in Savage. And then I just ducked the volume a little bit because overall I thought the acapella was a little bit too loud on the quieter parts of the instrumental. And then I was done after putting a limiter on the master here. I just adjusted for loudness that was lost. I did a 0.5 boost, ducked the release all the way down, and then I set the ceiling to negative 0.01 like I usually do. And then if you follow all these steps, you should have a mashup like this.
Now walk it out, walk it out, now walk it out, walk it out, now 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 west side walk it out, south side walk it out, east side walk it out, north side walk it out. Okay, now
Absolute banger. All right, ladies and gents, that wraps it up for today's video. Hopefully you learned something new. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends, all of that good stuff. And I'll be back next week. What am I doing next week? Oh yeah, next week I'm gonna show you how to make redrum edits. Till then, take it easy, stay safe, love you all. Peace out.